um, next session. So we have Eric Smith with us, who's going to be presenting 10 ways to get creative with Lightning components. So Eric, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thank you very much. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. I'm so happy to be here and be able to give this presentation today. Hopefully, you're all learning a lot about Salesforce and Salesforce automation. This sounds like a wonderful event. Today, I'm going to talk about 10 ways to get creative with Lightning components. First, a little bit about myself. I've been in the technology industry for over 40 years, in a lot of different roles, had my own business for a number of years. I've been a Salesforce MVP now for 3 years. I have 6 certifications, and I'm a very active contributor to a website some of you may be familiar with called unofficialsf.com. And everything I'm going to talk about today is going to be available on unofficialsf.com. It's a great resource for admins and flow builders and other folks trying to go above and beyond what's just built into the base Salesforce capabilities, and it really allows you to supercharge some of the things that you may want to do. Everything I'm going to talk about today is available for free online. There's no coding required. Everything is customizable. And these are all going to be components that I have either written myself or taken the work that somebody else may have started and added enhancements, updates, and other things to it. I'm going to go through 10 different components that can be used with Lightning record pages and or Lightning flows. And some of them are going to be very simple, and some may be a little more involved and a little more complex. So we're going to hop right in, and the first component I want to talk about today is a component that draws a line. Now, I said some of these are going to be simple. That's about as simple as you can get, being able to draw a line on a screen. You'll also notice in the bottom right corner, every one of these slides will have a QR code with a link that would take you directly to the page on Unofficial SF, where you can read more about the component, install it into your own org, and even take a look at the source code. So moving on, this particular component that draws a line, you can use this on a Lightning record page. You can also use it on flow screens. Now, why would you want to draw a line? A lot of times, if you're creating something for users, sometimes you just want to separate what they see on the screen. I have an example here where I've got a few buttons on the bottom left of the screen. The update button is associated with the component above it, the text, and the other 2 buttons are kind of interactive buttons to control the flow. Without a line, some of the buttons get a little jumbled together, but if just putting something as simple as putting a line in there kind of separates the components on the screen, makes it a little easier for the person interacting on this page to know what goes where. Another example of how we might want to use lines. Here's an example where I have a bunch of different data tables on one screen. They seem kind of all jumbled together, but if we were to just add in a component to draw a line between these, we now see that we can really visually separate what's on the screen just by using something as simple as a little line across the screen, a little color, and just adding that to my screen or to my flows. As I mentioned, these components can be configured, and one of the things you can configure in this particular component, you can set the width of that, the width of the line, and make it thinner or thicker. You can set the color of the line. You can set the spacing above and below it. So there's a lot of fine tuning you can do with the component just the way it comes right out of the box. Moving on, this is a component I wrote for Lightning record pages that displays the contents of a large text area field. As you're well aware, especially when you moved from Classic to Lightning, screen real estate is pretty important. And if you have a lot of big fields with a lot of text on them on your page, the user is going to have to scroll up and down to see other information on that page. And I wanted to give the user a little more control over what they're looking at on the screen. And I did that by coming up with a component that displays a large text area field, but also gives the user a toggle button that they can use to turn that on and off, to hide it or display it. And they could even drag the size of what's being displayed up and down to their preference as to what they want to see. And the benefit here is that they want to see other information on the page without these large fields taking over. They can just quickly toggle them off, toggle them back on when they need them. One of the other things you can configure in this component is you can set the starting size for that window to be small, medium, or large. And you can also display that field either in view mode or in edit mode. And if you're in edit mode, the user can go in and actually update the contents of that field. And there's an update button that they can click when they're done making the changes that'll then write those changes back to the Salesforce record. One of the things that that particular component used was a toggle. Another component I put out there was a button to or a toggle that you could put on a page to update the value of a checkbox field. There's some really interesting use cases you can get out of this. So I have a toggle button over here that the user can click if they want to escalate a case. And there's actually a field on the case record that is this escalated or not? It's just a checkbox field. And this toggle actually changes the value of that field whenever the user clicks on it. They can click it on, it updates the value of the field on the record automatically, and they can click it back off. Now, the interesting thing about being able to do this is not only does it set the value of a field, but keep in mind that you can have automation, triggered flows that'll run if a record changes. So I have another triggered flow out here that says if the value of the is escalated field changes to true, send a notification out. And you'll see that when this clicks, the notification icon pops up, and there was a new notification created that went out saying, hey, a case has been escalated. So you can add some additional automation capability around how the user is interacting with the screen that you put together. So in this case, we're actually clicking a button to run a flow. Another way that this can be used, and this is kind of interesting, is taking advantage of conditional visibility. When you just put information on a Lightning record page, you can make things conditional on various values. For example, the value of a field. If a value is a certain, like a checkbox field, if it's true, you might display something. If it's false, you might hide something on the page. And this is just a quick demo or a proof of concept to show that I can toggle these components on and off on my page using conditional visibility and a custom field that I have on the record that gets updated when these toggles change. So I'm saying I want to show my red component or I want to show my blue component. So when I click the toggle, the field gets updated, which then changes the conditional visibility on the page, which will either show or hide that part of the page. Just showing how this is done. Here's in the page designer. When you're in there, you see that we have conditional visibility, and we're setting that conditional visibility based on that value of the field in the record. Here's a component that I wrote. I had an interesting need. From time to time, you want to have information that's presented in Salesforce that you want to make it available outside of Salesforce. It could be any number of things you may want to do, but I wanted the ability to just click a button to put something in the clipboard rather than requiring the user to drag something over the screen to highlight something, click on copy, then go somewhere else and paste it. I'm able to, with this component, to find the information that I want to have to go into the clipboard and just present a button that they can use to copy the contents into the clipboard, and then they can paste them somewhere else, either inside or outside of Salesforce. In the example here, I'm just showing 4 different times I put this component on the page with a button to say copy, and we can copy that information. I've also made this configurable so you can put text on the button as well as just an icon if you want. You can put a label over the text. You can show what the text is going to be that's going to be copied. In fact, you can even There's even an option out there that once they click the copy button, what you've displayed can go away. So there's a lot of different ways you can configure this depending upon your own personal needs and how you want to use a component of this type. So this is a pretty handy little thing that you can put into a screen flow that just allows somebody to fill up your clipboard. Redirecting a flow to a new record. This is something that when you start working with flows, you find that you oftentimes may want to direct the flow and take that user from where they started the flow. It could have been on a case record, for example, and then you may want to redirect them later on in the flow to a different record, depending upon how they were interacting with the first record. In this example, I'm actually showing a user on a case record where they're creating a new asset that's going to be linked to the case. But once they've created that asset, I then want the user to be able to go and interact with that record. And it's a new record. So once I have that record ID and I plug it into this component, I can then redirect the flow, redirect the user's interaction to that new record. And you can set this up and configure it to say, I want to just go and view the record when I do this navigation or redirection, or you can do it in edit mode and they can go right into that new record and continue to edit it and make changes. So you can set this up or configure it either way. Very handy capability to add to your flows. This one is very interesting. The quick choice pick list is very, very powerful. There's a lot you can do with it. And I'm going to go through some of those capabilities that we have here. Originally, in fact, up until just the most recent release from Salesforce, pick lists, when you put the standard pick list field in a flow screen, you would always see all pick list values. You cannot restrict those values to only show which ones were valid for a particular record type. This particular component has always had that capability to do that restriction and only show those options based on the record type that you have there. And here, just a quick example showing a pick list for an opportunity stage with a couple different record types. And we'll see in this example that the values that are presented are going to be different depending upon the value that I added to this component to say what record type am I working with. So here we see one set of options for a residential record type and a whole different set of options if it's a commercial record type. And this component takes care of knowing what values it needs to present when we're doing that. And not only can this component display a drop-down pick list like you would normally see, you can have an option to say, is it going to be required or not? So somebody has to put in a value. You can make your options to be radio buttons, so they can see all of the options and select it that way. This is a capability I added in quite a while back to do what I call a visual card. So you have you could display a much larger set of options to the user, even with multiple columns, with icons, color, and other things. So you can really change how a user might be interacting with your flow by, rather than just having a standard selection of a pick list, you can have these visual cards. And so if you're taking somebody through a process with simple selections along the way, this is a very handy way of really jazzing up how you want to present that and how you want the user to interact with your flow. Data table. This one, this has probably been my most popular component. I've started working on this probably over 3 years ago, at least. We now actually have a beta version that Salesforce has put together in the current release for flow screens. There's still a long ways to go with that one, but this My Data Table component has a lot of capabilities in there that you can take advantage of today. And it allows you to display records on a screen, kind of like a list view, but you're displaying records that can be used for selection, used for just display purposes, used for editing, selection, any number of things. It's a very, very powerful component. In fact, last time I checked, I think this component was installed in over 50,000 Salesforce orgs. So there's some amazing use cases out there and a lot of different ways that people have put this to work. Why did I come up with this component? Originally, when I wanted to give a user the ability to pick a record in a flow, all I had available was the dynamic record choice, which is a good component that allows you to display some records, a field from some records, and let the user select from that list. But one of the drawbacks was that it only could display a single field. But I wanted to show information from more than just one field when I did this. So I did something that maybe others of you had done, is I created a formula field that took information from a bunch of other fields, kind of concatenated all of that together with separator characters and everything else, which basically allowed me to display that information that I wanted to put in front of the user, but at the same time, make a mess on your screen. It's kind of hard to read. I just wanted a cleaner, easier way to do this, something better than dynamic record choice. So we can see with the data table, we now are giving the user a much cleaner way to display those records. We can do multiple select, radio button selects. In fact, the user can even interact with that data and display it the way they want to see it. They can widen and narrow the columns. They can turn text wrapping on and off. They can sort the data into the order that they want to see. They can filter the information. They can edit the information. So you're basically, with a single component, putting an awful lot of capability and power out there to really allow your users to work with your flow, work with your data, and really some pretty sophisticated ways. I've written a lot of blog posts and informational articles on use cases, how to use this, why you may want to use this. And you can find those both on my own personal blog, Eric's Playground, and also on unofficialsf.com. So there's a lot of information out there on how you can put this to work and how other people have taken advantage of this particular component. Moving on, I'm going to go back to maybe a few simpler components now. One is a navigation button. This was developed originally when all you had available was previous, next, and pause for standard flow buttons on your screen. But I wanted the ability to have more control over what I may want to do for a button. What I want to display for the buttons, what I want them to look like, and how I want to interact with those buttons in my flow. So by using the navigation buttons, I could create buttons that have my own text on them. They can have their own color, and they can do a number of different things, not just go next or previous in the flow, but they can also navigate to another record, to a URL, to a website. A lot of power around buttons in a flow. And this example here, this cancel and reset buttons, I've configured this to have both of them do the same thing in the flow. They both do exactly what the next button does, but they're able to tell the flow which button was actually clicked to take them to that next point in the flow. So in this example here, what we see is on this screen, I had my buttons. They both go next, but then I can have a decision to say, well, what button did they actually click to get me here? And depending upon what button they clicked, I can then take a different action in my flow to go one way or another way, depending upon how the user interacted with the previous screen. Another thing that we can do with these buttons is you can provide programmatically what the button is going to look like, what the text on the button is going to be, and even whether or not that button is going to be displayed. And this component right here that's showing these three buttons, cancel, save changes, and set contact to inactive, I'll show you on this how those will actually change depending upon how the user is interacting with the flow. So in this case here, if I make some updates and click cancel, the flow goes back, resets, and I can start over again. If I select save changes, it saves those. I go back to the screen, and that's what I have. But if I set in this case, a contact to inactive, now the save button has gone away, and the other button now says reset or make the contact active again. So I could set it to inactive, the buttons change, one of them goes away, and now the button allows me to say change it back to an active contact. And this is all controlled by the flow, but this single component on the screen is taking information from the flow to determine how it wants to display that button and what buttons it even wants to put in front of the user. Quick lookup. This is another component that started well before there was a standard lookup component available from Salesforce for flows. But the interesting thing about this lookup component, which we still don't have as a native feature from Salesforce, is we have the ability to do what I call a parent-child or even a parent-child-grandchild lookup. And what that means is I can have a lookup on a screen. The values that it's going to display or make available be dependent upon what somebody selected on a different lookup on the same screen. Using the standard lookup component, you can only do that if you put all of your lookups on separate screens. So in this example, if I select an account, what I have available for a contact or a service address is going to be dependent upon what I put in for this account value. Let's just see that in action. The selection of one lookup determines what's available in the second lookup. So here, if I make one selection, I see certain options available for contact and address. But if I change that account to something else, those values clear out, and now I see a whole different set of selections. It's all dependent upon what that parent lookup component is returning for a value. Very, very powerful capability to put on a flow screen. The final component that I wanted to show, again, was we started by drawing a line, and we're going to finish up by showing a picture. This is just the ability to not just have a button, but to have an image or a picture behave like a button. So in this case, I have this is a sample screen where somebody's configuring some options that are going to then call out to Conga to do a merge document. So rather than just having a button that says Conga on it, I actually have an image of the Conga logo that somebody can click to then go and take the next step in the flow. And not only that, the way I've configured and created this component is you can have a different image be displayed if the mouse is being hovered over the image versus not on the image, and even another picture you can display when they're clicking on that image. So you kind of get you could use this to do almost like a three-dimensional effect on a flow screen, that as they move the mouse on and off your button, the button can change. So this is kind of an interesting effect and an option that you can put on a flow screen just to kind of spice things up a little bit and make things a little more interactive with the user. One other way I use this, this was a while back when I was transferring an org from Classic to Lightning. Every now and then my users always want to go back to Classic to do something. I wanted to keep them from doing that, so I updated my flow to display an image. In fact, in this case, it was a GIF file that if they tried to run this in Classic, it would show an image like this that says, no, you really can't do this in Classic anymore. Please go back to Lightning and finish up your process there. So this is just another example of how you could use this image or this button on a flow screen. So here are the 10 components that I talked about today, some for Lightning record pages, some for flow screens, some can be used in both. They're all available on unofficialsf.com. The links are here. You'll have access to this slide deck after today, so you can always go back to this and find these components and try them out for yourself. One last thing I want to leave you with is, as you noticed in some of these, was taking advantage of the flexibility and the power of conditional visibility. Now, both on your Lightning record pages and in your flow screens, this can give you an awful lot of power as an admin when you're building out your pages and your flows. Really take advantage of conditional visibility. Use those filters and use those to put the right information in front of the user at the right time. And it gives you as an admin much more power over what you're presenting and how you have your users interact with what you're building for them. So thank you very much. I'll go through what we may have for questions in the chat, and I'll try and answer some of those. So let's see what we have. Simon says he's building a flow using one of these components at the very moment. Well, that's great. I'm glad you're using one of these, and I'm glad you're able to multitask. I think that's an important skill for somebody in our field. So that's great. Best image for not going to happen. Yeah, that is a fun one. It brings a smile to your users trying to sneak around the system. So it's a way of just interacting with somebody, presenting something to somebody without making them feel bad about what they're doing. Add a little humor to it. So somebody asked, have I used the form repeater option? I have not. Thank you for sharing the link. commonuniteforce.com. I'll take a look at that. And see what that's about. Manny is asking, how do you get support if something breaks? With the Salesforce community, you have a lot of people out there, especially the people attending and presenting on a session like this today and tomorrow, that are willing and able to help each other out. And there's a couple really good Trailblazer community sites that you can go to with questions. Both Salesforce Automation is a very good one. And there's also a Trailblazer community for unofficialsf.com. You're able to go there, post questions, ask questions, post information there. I actively follow both of those communities. A lot of other people do as well. And I think you'll always find somebody available to try and answer questions and to help you out. So yes, with Unofficial SF, asking questions on either of those Trailblazer communities, you will typically get a fairly quick answer. And if you are having an issue, a way to resolve that. Brings up another point is, I mentioned I started working on the data table component, for example, over 3 years ago. But the questions and the ideas that come in from people on these communities of things that they want to do, the use cases that they have, it may not have been something I thought of originally, but some of these are really good ideas, and I'll take the time and the effort to actually build them into the component, come out with a new version that takes that person's idea but makes it available to everybody. So again, the power of the community, the power of sharing ideas, we can all benefit from that. Somebody asked that says Nicole says she's new to Salesforce but wants to learn more about working with these Lightning components. Those Trailhead is great. There's a lot of good training and information there, but also if you go to the homepage on unofficialsf.com, you'll find not just links to all of these components, but links to training and information and other articles about what you can learn about flows in general, Lightning components in general, a lot of ideas and other information there. So it's a really, really good resource for getting new information, learning more, and getting a lot of questions answered. So hopefully you'll take a look there, Nicole, and be well on your way on your journey to learning more about Lightning components. I'm happy to answer any other questions. If I missed anything, please post it again in the chat. Manny, I'm not sure I understand your question. How would you recommend companies? Maybe you could expand upon that question a little more. I can try and answer that for you. How would you recommend companies on unofficial that are not as supported officially? It's again, it's the community wanting to share information, share resources, help other people learn, help other people take advantage of what folks have created. I've always had the attitude myself that if I have a particular need that I need to solve, and I've got to go and do something custom in order to do that. If I can't find it out there, or if I can't find an easy or inexpensive way of putting something in place, and I have to build it myself, I always take the path that I don't just want to build a solution to my problem today. I want to build. I always want to build something that will solve my use case, but build it in such a way that I could configure it and enhance it and modify it down the road to fit other use cases as well, and not just for myself, but for many other people as well. So I hate to do one-off fixes. I always like to build something that can be adaptable and usable by many other folks. The unofficialsf.com is kind of a interesting name. The name is almost hurts the value of the site. It actually was started by and is still very actively maintained by a Salesforce employee, a product manager. Actually, now he's probably all the way up to a VP level at Salesforce, but a product manager on the Salesforce automation team. And it's a way for them to put new ideas out there that they may not be ready to release as a finished product, or make part of the official Salesforce product yet, but really to get something out there that people can take advantage of immediately. I know when I first started working with Salesforce, I'd see things out there that, yeah, we're going to see this come out with 3 releases. Well, you don't always want to wait a year to get a capability and put it in place. You want to be able to do something more immediately. So this is one way to do that. So and the source code is there as well. Even if your people are welcome to go and learn from the source code, even if they can't install something because it's from another site, they can still take the source code, build it themselves, or have their developers go through and use that as a template, and still be able to put these type of components into their org that way. I'll hang on for another 5 minutes or so, see if any other questions come up. Also, not just questions, if you've used some of these components yourself, and want to tell me and the others on this in this session how you put some of these to work and some of your use cases, please share. I'd be glad to pass that along as well. It's always interesting to see what other people come up with and how they can put some of these to work. You're always welcome to reach out to me. I'm love to hear from folks, and you can reach me on Twitter, LinkedIn, directly on email. Feel free to reach out anytime. Yemeni is asking, how can I get an auto-generated sequence number creating field through Flow? Auto-generated sequence numbers, basically those are created in the object manager. Your name field, for example, can be set up as an auto sequence. If you want to build your own custom field with Flow, you could always read in your records in a sorted order. look at what the most recent number was in your custom field, have your flow increment that by 1, and then use that as the value for the next time you want to use that particular field. Doug says the data table components helped him big time in a registration flow that he created. That's great, Doug. Glad to hear that. Yeah, there's a lot of great ways to use that. So, yeah, thanks for sharing. So thank you again. I'll leave this slide up. Reach out to me anytime if you have individual questions that you want to ask. I'll try and take the time to answer them for you. So again, thank you very much. Glad to be here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions, the rest today and tomorrow. This is a great conference, and thank you to all the folks who have put this on. Thanks.